Goonhammer has partnered with Legalized Mischief to present you with Colin Ward's long-form painting videos. Like and subscribe, and follow Legalized Mischief and Goonhammer for more hobby tutorials.
Hey everyone, it's Colin with Legalized Mischief Productions. Thank you for joining me and welcome. And today I'm going to be doing the first segment of the Kitbashing Masterclass for Inaana, Queen of Heaven, the Knight Dominus, for my Feral Knights project and kind of the centerpiece model for the project. This is going to be kind of the spiritual center of the project. It's going to bring a lot of different elements together, and I'm excited. I have been considering this kit bash for a while, trying to figure out how I wanted to do it, and finally got all the pieces together. So this is a very ambitious build. I'm not entirely sure how I'm gonna go about it, but I know which pieces I want. I know where to start. I know which pieces I want where. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the Feral Knight project in general, and then get into kind of the thinking behind this piece, and then go into just kind of an overview of the build. So the Feral Knight project started off as something for Adeptus Titanicus, and then I experimented and kind of expanded it into 40K, into 28 millimeter scale. This is one of the knights here, which is a Feral Knight Armiger, and this is for a list I'm going to be taking. I mean, it's just for my army, but there we go. It's a really nice green here. There we go. Okay. So as you can see, a lot of texture. The reds with the rust, gray, kind of blue-gray rock, verdigris, and then the green armor. It's a very straightforward kind of scheme. Very vibrant basing, and then you can see, let me focus in here. So you can see on the knight, built up a lot of texture on the thigh plates. Obviously, all the kind of grass texture there, rust texture, stone, cracked plates, and then very verdant basing to kind of tie it all together. And then this one is Naram Sin, father of pyres. So the idea is that kind of what would happen if a world was just abandoned, but some stewards were left behind, and the Night House being one of those, and kind of being subsumed by the kind of world spirit of the planet, and kind of what would that look like? It's not a malignant force, it's not a chaos, it's not anything like that. It's just the world spirit of the planet. And over time, as that influences the knights, they become more and more feral. And they just kind of exist on the planet to kind of protect themselves, protect the planet. But they're not, allied to anybody in particular. So one of the things that was important in 28 millimeter in 40K was to ensure that I could play this army as either Chaos or Imperial. I think it definitely does that. There's nothing overly expressive either way. The kind of skulls and everything kind of make it look a little more chaotic. This is a Knight Moriax. People have asked if they're Nurgle Knights because they're green. But they're feral. So green works. It's also a lot of fun to paint, a lot of fun to play with. So that's the theme. That's the theme of the list, or the army rather. I really like it. It's a lot of fun to paint. It's a vast departure from the precision of my Blood Angels. So having this as a second army is really nice to just kind of relax and paint some very organic stuff. And it lets me just kind of have fun with conversions and literally glue rocks to things. And it's just a fun project. So the naming conventions are from ancient Sumerian mythology. I studied a lot of mythology and religion in college. And Inaana, Queen of Heaven, was one of the deities of Sumerian religion, one of the lead deities in Sumerian mythology and religion. And it's just fucking epic. Like, it's just great mythology. It's great poetry. So that's where I kind of went back to that kind of, origin of civilization on Earth, in the Tigris and Euphrates and all that. So the names are really unique. They're really kind of ambiguous as far as, they're not like high Gothic kind of Latin names like you'd associate with like Imperial Knights and things like that. But they have a very kind of bestial quality to them, an ancient quality to them that I really, really liked. So that's where the naming convention comes in. A lot of the kind of just different names and lesser deities and things like that. That's where I got inspiration for the names for all these knights. Naming is something that's really hard to do and time-consuming, deceptively time-consuming. So very proud of that part of this project as well. You'll see those names crop up as I post more and as they are finished. And so when it came to doing the centerpiece model, Inaana, Queen of Heaven, is going to be the Knight Dominus or the Knight Tyrant in a Chaos list. And so obviously the base model is going to be a Knight Valiant. I have managed to track down some Castellan bits, and so I'll be magnetizing the main arms to switch between the Valiant and the Castellan. Just for prudence sake, the arms were cheaper than buying a second Knight, and I almost certainly won't ever field two Knight Dominus in the same game. That would be a level of silly that even I'm not really privy to. So Knight Valiant is the base model. It's the largest of the plastic knights from GW. I do have a Knight Lancer from Forge World that will just be another knight. And then I also have a Knight Asterius, which is enormous. It's about the size of a Warhound Titan. But I didn't want that one to be the centerpiece because it's probably never going to see the field, or maybe once, every once in a while, I'll break it out for a fun game. But this is a model that would actually see the table. So that is kind of what went into making this my centerpiece instead of the largest knight, which is the Forge World Knight Asterius, the big conversion beamer knight. If you haven't checked out that model, check it out. That model is incredible. It's goofy and weird and absurd, and it's just kind of peak 40K, and I love it. So eventually I will have that project as well, but I wanted to get this one done and actually get it on the table because this is going to be awesome. So, Knight Valiant, base model. And then I wanted something grand. I wanted something, the other knights, like my little Knight Armiger Warlord has some very large rocks hanging off the top that are kind of chained to it. This guy is the Warlord in my 13 Armiger list that I'll be taking to an event this weekend. So I wanted something to just kind of project up from the back of the knight on like this area here. I wanted something big, something obnoxious to really, really set this thing apart and give it kind of a grand, just a grand presence. It's like a walking altar. It's like a walking fane to their god, right? If you've seen like the No Open Charity Foundation raffle for, I think this summer, Dave Taylor made a Slanesh Knight Dominus or Knight Tyrant rather, that had the Glutros Heathen Knights of Slanesh centerpiece model on the top, and it looks insane. It's super cool. Dave does a lot of sculpting and stuff that I haven't ventured into, but it's a similar thing, similar kind of centerpiece, the big focus of the collection, really. The Asterius is physically larger, but it's kind of like just a big bruiser. It's not, I don't think it has the kind of majesty that a Dominus will, and also, again, the playability. So the tricky part was figuring out exactly what I was going to use for that. I've decided to use the Beasts of Chaos Herdstone. This is really one of my favorite terrain pieces that GW has made. It's fairly simple, but it's just really cool. It's just a really neat piece. It's obviously fits in with the feral theme. This thing is extremely, extremely big. So as you can see, it's, I don't know, 5 or 6 inches long. It is not a small piece. The nice thing is the rock is actually separate from this enormous base. I don't need assembly instructions for something as simple, but you see how big that base is and how tall it is. So not going to use the base. That'll be, use that for something else, like AOS scenery at some point down the line, maybe. But some of these chains, maybe I can also use just chain link that I already have. This chain is actually sculpted really nicely, so we may end up using that. We'll just have to wait and see. Some nice skeleton bits there, all in good. And then just these, the runes, the carved runes, the bestial nature of the fane or the altar, really just reinforce this theme of the feral knights. A lot of my knights have skulls from the Citadel Skulls pack, these kind of beast skulls. So this is really a no-brainer. This is perfect. So that's really going to reinforce the theme of the army. And this is going to get mounted to the top plate of this knight here. Where? Which I will not be doing today, but going to map it out. Going to see how it looks. So here's the top plate for the knight. I may have to shave this down. See how it's raised up there. I have other plans. I may need to shave that down, but roughly this is going to be mounted kind of like that on the knight. It's going to be huge, but it should be huge. The knight is really the thing that's holding up this altar. It's not about the knight, right? So we have the Valiant. Herdstone goes on top of the Valiant like so, just sticking out the top from around. Like, if this gun disappears, I don't care. I'm not really concerned about that WYSIWYG of that one gun. I'm sure people will get over it. What I am going to do is make a altar. So we have the Beast of Chaos Herdstone that's going to be mounted on top of the knight. And I thought, what better than to kind of make some offerings around the stone, skulls, weapons, maybe some bowls of, fluids or food or, something like that. I don't know quite how I would do that just yet, but, maybe we can figure it out. And what would an altar be without a attendant or a high priestess? So she would need somewhere to stand. So I got the idea to do kind of a platform. I would draw this out, but I am terrible at drawing. So the idea is to cut this off, flatten this out, put a piece of slate extending out off the front of the knight, and then have the herdstone extend up, this piece of slate extending out, and then on the piece of slate, standing on the slate, will be the Cenari Cathalar from Age of Sigmar Lumineth Realm Lords line, this kind of ethereal priestess, essentially. She's got an offering bowl, little incense, little burning offering there. I'm not sure if I'm going to keep all this jazz around her. I may not. I'm going to have to get into the model and really see what I want to do. But I thought this would be a really great, it's kind of ambiguous as far as, AOS or 40K. It'll certainly fit as this kind of priestess at this altar, and she will be, the high priestess to Inaana, kind of leading this battle, spiritual battle, I guess. So the idea is that they have this walking altar, and then around it will be cut the war dogs, the armigers and the Questoris class knights, and the specialists, the Cerastus class, and then the big brawler, the Acastus class. So I went down to landscaping company that sells, stone for patios, and just they're the place you go to buy trees, and just like a big it's not a nursery. They have a nursery and they sell stone and stuff. So I went and got basically slate chips from these pieces are so small that they just give them to me. They're the pieces from the bottom of the pallets when they're moving around stone. So these just flaked off of larger pieces. Obviously, a piece like this is going to be way too big. Nice thing about slate is it breaks really easily. I have a nice long flat piece here that's relatively thin. I can probably break this into a rough size that I need. This piece I think is very promising if I can make it smaller like so. I do want a kind of arrowhead shaped piece. This one's pretty heavy. This one's too thick, but I'm sure I will have uses for these down the line. Good piece of slate does not go unused around here. So maybe cut this one. This one does have some really nice texture on it though, so I may try to use this one and then see what happens, how it breaks. But I need to figure out how big of a piece I need, And then I'll be using 2-part resin epoxy to kind of underpin the platform, get that attached to the knight, and then get the herdstone attached to the slate. That stuff bonds to everything. And then I'll use slate chips to kind of fill that out and integrate it to the chassis of the knight and do the texturing. A lot of chains, a lot of kind of rope and skulls. And I mean, there's going to be a lot going on. Little kind of creatures from the Sylvaneth line. I want to try to do, I think might try to do like an oil wash, kind of a recess wash in these runes to make them glow as it's kind of running around on the battlefield. So there's a lot that I want to do for this project. This is just kind of the scope of that, and also just kind of an explanation of why, why did this end up, looking how it does. And it's because, the kind of origins of the theme for this army really lend themselves to this kind of centerpiece, this kind of walking altar centerpiece model. I think it's going to be awesome. I think it's going to be a really extraordinary project. I think it's going to look cool. I can't wait to get started. I think it's going to be great. So it's going to be very time consuming. It's going to take a while. This tutorial series is going to be fairly long. There will probably be lots of swearing involved during assembly when I'm trying to figure out how to do this top part. But that's part of the journey. It's part of the hobby is, trying to figure this stuff out. So when we come back, I'm going to build out the bottom part and probably leave that off to the side for the most part for now. Kind of get everything situated as far as this top carapace area goes, and get enough of this to work with to where now we can start working on the slate pieces and getting the altar kind of cut down, getting that fit, and then attaching that to the knight. So I hope you found this interesting. I hope you're excited about this project. I'm excited about this project. I think it's going to be great. And I'm looking forward to working on it kind of alongside you. I mean, this is something that's, very specific to kind of this theme of an army, but I hope that the ambitiousness of the project and the kind of commitment to the theme is something that you can integrate into your own projects and explore how to do that and how to kind of visualize these things and how to make it happen in kind of in an unconventional way. I mean, this is, a 40K model, Age of Sigmar terrain, from Beastmen, Lumineth, High Elf type, HQ, and some slate from the Garden Center, and we're going to make something of it, and it's going to be awesome. So, yeah, I'm excited to get started. I'm gonna get this built and get it to a point where we can start messing around with some slate chips and getting everything situated. So, thank you. Hope you enjoyed it. I hope you're excited. I'm excited. And thank you for your support. If you have any questions, ideas, concerns, anything you'd like me to highlight, please leave it in the comments. And, when we come back, we'll hopefully start putting this thing together. As you can see, between the first segment and now, I've assembled all the different pieces that I'm going to need for this build. We have the main body of the Knight Dominus. I've done a couple different things here. I put some Magic Sculpt, which is 2-part resin. It dries super, super hard. It adheres to plastic, metal, wood, everything. I've put some on the torso to just kind of extend. Whoops. Well, okay. To just extend the waist and just make it a little bit taller. It's going to be a very tall model, but I've also in that time assembled a Cerastus knight and an Acastus knight, and this knight was looking very, very small in compared to the Cerastus pattern. So I just wanted to give it a little bit more length in the torso. This will all get covered up when we do all the texturing and everything. The armor plates are glued on. This all gets textured and weathered and everything all together. So it is going to be, for the most part, fully assembled. The only difference is going to be that I magnetized the arms. So I will be tracking down some Castellan weapons on eBay, get those, magnetize those, and then I'll be able to swap out for either a Valiant or a Castellan. I can't see fielding 2 Knight Dominus in one list, so I'm just going to save myself the trouble, magnetize the arms, and have the option to do either depending on which one I want to run. So I think that's the prudent thing to do in this situation. And so those will get weathered up separately when I get the Castellan weapons as well. So cross that bridge. We'll cross that bridge when we get to it. So lengthen torso. Then I also built the Herdstone that will be going on the back of the model, and the Cenari Cathaller, the High Priestess. She's very lightly glued onto this rock. I do not anticipate hanging onto that rock. I did leave her little bowl separate, which will also get painted up. It just goes on here, but it's just, there's no reason to have it on there. It's just be way easier to paint separately. She'll be on there. I don't know that I'm actually going to change the model that much. I really like the model, kind of how it is. I think having all this embellishment is fine for a priestess. So the paint will integrate her with the rest of the army and stuff. So I'll probably do like I don't know. We'll see. Getting sidetracked. And then of course I have the slate chips here. So first thing, what we're going to do whenever we're doing a kit bash kind of this extensive is we're just going to, of course, dry fit. This is the top plate for the knight. Oh, the other thing I did that was important is I reversed the exhaust. So these exhausts are now pointing down. I think it's fine, like from a function standpoint. Not that I really need function in a giant walking shrine, but it's fine from a function standpoint. Otherwise, this was going to be sticking kind of straight up to about here. And you'll see why I changed that in just a second. This thing is huge. So I want to just point out that this thing is almost as tall as the knight just by itself, right? This is a big, I mean, in a gameplay sense, it's not that big, but for conversions, from a conversion standpoint, this thing's large. So what happened was when I put this on the back of the knight, like so, it's enormous. Like that is just so far out of proportion that it looks ridiculous, right? Like that just looks ridiculous. So obviously I'm not just going to put that on top of the knight there. If I move it down a little bit, that's better, but still not great. I think I need to move it down even more, kind of to probably about there, I think is good. Now we have the proportion is a little bit more even between the torso. So if we cut this off, here, it's about kind of torso sized. It's not the entire knight. And it cuts off a lot of this kind of superfluous. There's a lot of extra area on the bottom. I don't need this little kind of hole there. It's not a hole, it's indentation. I don't know. That doesn't matter. So this, now looking at the back of the knife here, where this is actually going to mount, I want this to mount kind of on the back of the knife because I want to have some distance going this way for the slate and for the priestess. So, so we're looking at mounting this in this area here, kind of on the back here. This little notch like that is where we're going to probably mount that. So I think that looks pretty good there if we kind of superimpose it like that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this marker and kind of do one of these, because this can be, I want this to kind of go over the exhausts like so, and then I can pull it back and reintegrate it. So I'm going to cut that down. I'm going to come back up on this side. Like so. So that's going to be the cut. I can use hand clippers. I don't know where I used to have a jeweler saw around here somewhere, one of those little red ones. But what I'll typically use is a Dremel. Will be my go-to for a cut like this. I'll just use a Dremel with a little cutting wheel attachment. And you can come in here with just regular nippers and start like carving away at this and then clip all the way around. I'm not particularly interested in doing that. It's just going to take a while and it's not great for the nippers. So first things first, we're going to kind of flatten that out and mount it above the exhaust, kind of back here. This can be general. This does not have to be, and this is something that I like about the ferrule scheme. This does not have to be a seamless conversion. There is an endless opportunity to fudge the edges, to adjust off of where the pieces need to fit, and then fill in with the putty, with sand, with flock, with all the different, chain, twine. There's going to be endless opportunities. So what we need to do right now is just get the pieces in place. Now, the other big part is going to be mounting the slate platform on top. Now, this is the general idea, and this is way too big, right? So we're gonna bring that down to probably about there. I think looks pretty good. I don't want it extending it too far forward. It's gonna look too front heavy, but I do want it to be pretty close to that. Now, the other problem that I have here is kind of mounting this on top of this middle kind of hump in the armor here. I have two options. One, I can do that, and then I can backfill underneath it. Or, and this is the route that I'm going to go in, I can come through here and just cut the top of the knight off. And this will give me a flat area. Now, I do have to be careful because the weapons are going to have to be mounted somehow. They don't have to be pointing in the right direction necessarily, but these need to be mounted. So what that's going to end up looking like is come on. God. Yeah, that's the mount for the shoulder. So the shoulder drops down lower. I'm not worried about the shoulder. The shoulder is going to fit no matter what I do with the slate. The shoulder is going to fit. Now, it's important for the shoulder to fit. So I obviously want that design element to be there, and it sells it as a knight. So again, this comes out to about here. That's the space we're going to need for the gun on that side. And then this is the space we're going to need for the gun on this side. And this is just approximate. You know, we don't necessarily need that. If I have to chop the inside part of this gun, if I have to cut this part off of this gun to get it to fit next to the slate here, I will absolutely cut that off. It doesn't really have to make sense. It doesn't really have to be fully functional. It has to be like sort of functional. It does not have to be fully functional to sell this idea. It's really important to stress that because it's going to save us a lot of time and effort, and it's going to save a lot of kind of fiddling around with the design, and we're using natural elements. It's one of the reasons I chose this theme to go with for this army, is I didn't want to spend all the time in the world on it. Now, looking on the back here, we're also going to have to cut some of this back portion out here. That's not going to matter at all. That's all going to be covered by that shrine. So we can actually just go, I don't need to Dremel this whole body. We can just come in with the nippers and then just grab that and pull. It does. So like that. And then kind of the top. Good one. There we go. Great. So the next step is going to be to cut the top off of that. And now when that's cut off, we're going to be about here. Oops. That over. Probably going to be about here on the slate. That's a little wide. Think it's a little sharp. It's kind of scary. I think it's this piece is going to be. It's like we can just get a corner here. Absolutely going to save those chips. You can break this corner off here. All right, now we're cooking with gas. It's got a little asymmetrical on the front here. There we go. Easy. There we go. There we go. Okay, now we're talking. And then I need to break this here at the end. That's a little too far out front. I like that kind of scoops up a little bit on the side. Gives a little bit of... Now, this is going to be mounted on top of the carapace, obviously. So it's going to be a little bit higher. And it's going to be... You'll see when it comes time to actually attach this, it will be done. When it comes time to attach it, it'll be done with the magic sculpt. So it's going to adhere to this. It's going to adhere to this, and it will also give me an opportunity to kind of flatten this how I want. So, but this I like. This is the piece we're going to use. This is going to be well balanced. I need to put this on to see where I need it to end. So that's going to be there. I think we can have it end. I think that's fair, right? That's enough of a, yeah, that's good. So that ending is about, let's stay here or so. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, I'm going to mute the camera. I'm going to take this, I'm going to put it on the edge of the table here, and I'm going to hit it with a wrench because this stuff is so fragile. So I'm just going to mute this real quick. Huh, okay, pretty close. Pretty close. Not bad. And there we have the platform, the natural, like you can't, I mean, you can try and sculpt this, but that natural, like kind of sedimentary rock look, these natural breaks, I mean, this was free and took 2 minutes to break into, well, I'm gonna need a big rock on the back of this base to balance everything, but it'll be good. So here we have. Oh, I might need to break a little bit more. There we go. Okay. So there we have the platform on the front of the knight. This is going to be extending over. The head is going to be hanging here. I haven't really decided what I'm going to do for the head yet. The go-to is to kind of use this big skull from the kit, but I don't really like, there's no femininity to it. I don't necessarily love that idea. So I have to figure out what I'm going to do about the head, but it will come to me. So for now, the head is an open question. We'll cross that path when we get to it. But we have this, and we have, so the Hearthstone's going to come up behind there. Boom, boom. With the, okay, platform, Hearthstone. You get the weapons on there to give the knight itself a little more bulk. So weapons, Hearthstone, priestess. The Hearthstone will be a little higher. So there we go. Priestess. And then I'm going to do offerings and little stuff on the platform itself, so it's not just this big expanse of empty space. I'm really happy with that. I'm super, super happy with that. The knight looks a little weedy. This is taking over the knight, but keep in mind we do have the rest of the carapace. We have the shoulders to put on, the weapons. Come on. There we go. The weapons, and then all the accoutrement, all the other elements of the Feral Knights, the rocks, chains. If I want to put on some trees or something, like we'll bulk this thing out to where it makes sense. But for now, couldn't be happier with how this is going so far. That looks awesome. See, like that profile looks badass. Really, really cool. And then the Hearthstone coming out the back of it. Like that profile just looks sweet. And then you're going to have the the priestess. It's going to be awesome. I'm excited. So let me take a break, and when I come back, I will have cut those pieces, and then we can kind of dry fit these different elements together and see where we're at. So we'll be right back. Okay, and we're back with the very rough cut coming off the Dremel. But again, that's fine. That's not a big deal. It's just going to get some of this loose stuff off here. Not a big deal at all. Kind of square off the ends. I actually know that I'm going to take a notch out of the end there. And then just try to even up the front a little bit. Just with the nippers. The Dremel is such high RPM that it really just kind of melted the plastic a little bit too, which is fine. It's not a big deal. So we just come through, just clean it up a little bit. Doesn't need to be fancy. This is barely going to fit on, but the front, so these front kind of attachment points here are what's going to keep that honest, as they say. Ditch the weapons. It's a messy process. I mean, this is not, this is an inexact science, but so far it's looking pretty good. So far what we're looking at here is we have this is why I cut those notches out the end. We have this kind of down slope, and I'll flesh that out if I have to, but I don't think I'll have to. We have this kind of down slope back here, and then we have the flat-ish area on top to mount the slate. So I'm going to keep this for a later project. It's kind of a cool piece. You never know. This part is going to mount like, kind of like so. Ish. Oof, this cut was rough. And this is where the nippers can come in. So we can kind of core this out a little bit. Even that up a little more. Try to dodge this skeleton for some reason. That's a little more even. At least on the front there, a little more even. But I also want it to stand up straight, so. But like I said, we're gonna backfill that with a bunch of putty and stuff to make it integrated. But I do want to kind of settle. There we go. Like right there. That's pretty square. That's pretty squared up to the center of the Titan. That's pretty. That is pretty close. Let's get a straight. I don't have a straight edge from here. It's in here. Well, we're just eyeballing it for now. So the crease down the middle of the, like, that's pretty spot on. Pretty close. Let me rotate it a little bit, but. So that's pretty close. So I'm happy with that. That is a close enough, certainly, to start. We're going to make sure the carapace just kind of fits on there. Bumping into the carapace just a little bit. And we can just keep cutting parts of the back of the carapace away. I'm not at all worried about how that's going to end up working out. There we go. So that is kind of the shrine on there. It's a good height. It's It's definitely large and in charge, but it gives it a good height. I'm super happy with it. Then we have the, see, now this thing's looking way too long now. Unless, let's see what happens here. Bring this back a little bit. Wow, yeah, see? Too much. We're going to have to cut out the front of that, or just backfill. Can't really backfill forever though. This is too long by a bunch. By about that much, hopefully. There we go. Ooh, there we go. Okay. Some better lighting in this situation? What's going on here? Hang on. Wouldn't be one of my tutorials if I weren't adjusting. Okay. That's a good length off the front there. That's kind of squared up. And then looking back here, looking at the top, we'll have to break out a little bit to fit the guns, but for right now, I just want to get a general sense of where this is going. Okay. This needs to be on top of that somehow. Because now what we're looking at is, should have done more of a notch. Should have done more of a notch when I cut it. Oh, geez. Okay. That's fine. Okay. Oops. Okay, we got that. We got that. And then that little notch is going to help. And maybe we can slide another piece of so like that. Notch it out. Another piece of slate on the back there. Oh, hold on. So we got to cut that out. Get this even with the exhaust. There, as you can see there, that's even with the exhaust now. That's going to be under the slate, so it really doesn't matter what happens to that. There we go. Okay. Carapace is on. This sits on the carapace like so-ish. This is notched to sit like that on top of the, and we'll take care of the seam and all that, but that is notched to sit like that. And then this comes in just to kind of support and make up for all the stuff that I cut away. I cut away too much on the bottom. Make it up, and then as we stick putty in there, we're going to have more pieces of slate kind of coming out of these areas to kind of balance that. We're going to have more pieces of slate coming out from underneath here to kind of give it a more natural look. So I think that, so there, mount, just a fire board that can, so kind of like that. So we really need to pull off like that and like that or so, which should not be hard. And then that'll give us a nice guide for where we need to, where this lines up on the body of the Titan, right? It'll line up with those gun port areas. Looks almost like an arrowhead. I remember looking for those when I was a kid, growing up in the hills there in the county. So kind of line that up. Oh, I need a little bit more out of here. Kind of like right, like right there. And the guns sit like that. The focus going. Was gun lines up like that. We are in business. Come straight off the front like that. That's a good length. It's not overbearing. Notched shrine sits on the back like that. A lot of chains are going to come into effect here with the shrine. This notch needs to be just a little deeper here. Whoops, wrong. This is all going to get, there we go. Like that. I'm going to fill in around the base with putty, skulls, shards of rock, etc. and so on. But that gives you the general idea. And then, of course, our priestess on the front. Oh, it's not gonna stay. Oh, it kind of stays. That's good. So that gives you a basic idea of what this is gonna look like when it's all done. More like that. I think it's gonna look freaking awesome. That is cool. And again, we put this on to bulk up the Titan a little bit, bulk it up with the shoulder a little bit back here. Oh, not gonna do that. But you can see at the bottom of the Titan will hold the weight. It'll balance it out. So when we come back, so that's the mock-up. So we're done. We're done with the mock-up. We're done getting the big chunks, literally, kind of decided. Get this out of the way, get that out of the way. I'm going to save this piece for the back end. Get it all back in my project box here. Where all the main pieces for this build stay in this project box really throughout the project. I mean, it'll change as obviously as we assemble things, but this is my project box for this night. So excuse me. Now that the main chunks are done, I'm going to clean up. Obviously, I'm going to save all this stuff. I have slate chips, but they're a lot smaller than this generally. So this is exciting to have kind of larger pieces. I may break some more pieces. I'm pulling out plastic right now, but I may break some larger pieces off some of these other slate pieces that I have here to give me even more variety when it comes time to finish assembling like this. I'm never going to use this whole giant. I don't need this whole giant piece. So like if I can break some pieces off of this. Ooh, that is a thick piece of slate. I'm going to break these. Okay, I made my point. I'll bang this on the ground or something, break off some more pieces. But this will give me more flexibility when it comes time to filling out underneath the platform. So next time when we come back, we are going to start working with some putty and getting these elements actually attached to the model, gluing the rest of the armor plates and everything on the model. We're going to get that all in place. And then we're going to, when that dries, so that's going to be the next, and then after that dries, then we're going to come back and do all of the texturizing and things like that. So I'm really pleased with how this is coming along. I'm really happy that was as easy as it was. But this is the process. This is kind of the ugly phase to the max, with how different this is, and just how it's a totally different animal to like making a character kit bash where like everything needs to fit, everything needs to work together, flow together. This does, but there's way more room for error, and there's way more flexibility with this because it is a natural scheme, which of course, again, I did intentionally, because I didn't want it to be that kind of precision project. Today we are going to start attaching things to this knight, and celebration of that, we are going to get some pieces out here. So we got the main carapace piece. We got the glue. I use extra thick MaxiCure Santa Acrylite super glue. I like the extra thick because it gives me some more working time and little gap filling. I did break off some more slate chip pieces from one of the larger slabs that I had. These are super sharp though, so I want to be a little careful. But these will help me fill in. You'll see how these will come into play. And then I'm using Magic Sculpt. which is 2-part resin. This stuff is phenomenal. It's like, I don't know, $30, I think, you have to buy them both, obviously. You mix the resin and the hardener, but I think it's about $30 for, what it is, 8 ounces of each. That being said, I can remember buying these at least 4 or 5 years ago. So like $6 a year for this stuff is pretty. I do not have much left. I need to order some more. So what this stuff does is you mix it together, you get plenty of working time, but it dries rock hard and it adheres to everything. So it'll adhere to the stone and the plastic and just keep everything kind of locked in place. So first things first, plenty of glue on the... And if you're wondering, I still have not decided what I want to do about the face for this. I'm thinking... I don't know. Keeper of Secrets head might be cool, but this is a little far from just the bone aesthetic I'm going for, but so I don't really know what direction I'm going to go with that. So I just wanted to get that on there so that we can lay down a little bit of the magic sculpt. So I'm going to take, I don't know, that much. I can always mix up more and then get some of this hardener here. You can see this stuff's super old, but it still works. So I used it just the other day. Because actually nothing gets activated until you mix them. But the hardener is looking a little janky here. But, I mean, it's fine. It's not worried about it. This thing's not going to come apart. So it's about equal. Just eyeball it. A little bit of water just to get everything moving. It should be pretty close to enough. Again, if it's not enough, I'll just mix some more. Big deal. We're basically going to use it as, clay putty. And I have downstairs is the back of this. So I'm just going to use a mat here. Pause 1 second. Okay, so I just went downstairs and got, as you can see, my dedicated putty board here. So, little water, mix. This is pretty well mixed, as you can see. Now what I'm going to do is roll it out. Because the way I'm going to be attaching it really is going to be using ropes. Using ropes in this stuff, not like big chunks necessarily. So first things first is we're going to attach the big piece of slate. So this is actually a little... So kind of like that. Lay that out. We have some nice height across the board there. And then remember, we're lining it up. This is the tough part now. We're lining it up with those gun ports and with the back of the thing. We want to make sure that the point is, roughly on center with everything else. Doesn't have to be exact. But, we want it to be close-ish. So I think that's pretty close. And now I'm just going to push down to get that. Oh, that was a mistake. Okay, that's fine. We're good. We're good. And now looking at the front. Oops. That looks pretty good. It's a little off center, but this is off center, right? So as far as the Titan is concerned, or the Knight, that's pretty dead on. We have room for the guns on either side there, and it's pretty well lined up. There's a little rotation there. Pretty well lined up on the back. Perfect. Step one. Success. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a little rope. I'm going to come underneath here. And you can use pretty much anything. For inexact work like this, you could just use your finger. I have little, sculpting tools and shit, but for this is fine. Now what that's giving me is an area to just kind of plug in other pieces of slate here. So it doesn't just look like this one enormous piece just kind of hanging off the front of which it is, but we want it to have a little bit more character here. Oops, this broke. Okay, that's fine. That's cool. So maybe we can slide that under there. And even get some super glue in there. So some flakes in there. This one doesn't really want to cooperate, so now I'm going to get one of these little silicone tools and just buttress up kind of underneath there with the magic sculpt, and that's going to hold that piece at bay. And then we can get just like a little sharp piece, but I'm going to break the tip off. Now this is only going to be seen if you're like eye level with the Knight, but I think it's important to give it a little bit of depth so it's not just, as I said before, it's not just like this one slab just hanging off the front of the Titan. This is like kind of giving it more permanence. Like it looks more organic. That's the word I'm looking for. It looks more natural. It looks more organic to have other elements. It's like an outcropping. It's not just one big piece kind of hanging out up there. It's more of an outcropping experience. So we'll get some other little, maybe one more little piece there just to keep them honest. What I don't want to do is start pushing this up with the slate. But see, that looks better. That looks more natural already. And I'm going to push one more piece right there. Well, maybe one more. There we go. Perfect. That looks cool. I was happy with that. So now we have some rock outcropping like looks. This shoulder is going to be mostly covered with the weapons here. So I don't want to get too squirrely with the slate on the side here because I don't want to screw these weapons up. Plenty of clearance. Okay. Good. Slate is on there. Perfect. Looks good. Little outcropping off the front. Happy with that. Now coming to the back, this is going to be the tough part. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get a couple little ropes up here because I don't really know where this thing is going to hit. So I just want to be kind of prepared. Yeah, I'm going to need more of this magic sculpt for sure. But what are they doing with this? Like that? Like that. There we go. So just kind of loosely put it on there, and then I'm going to need more. I need to mix. More of that. There we go. I want to use it all because I haven't ordered any more yet. So most of that. It's a little nerve-wracking. I'm not going to lie, because I only really get one shot at this. If this doesn't come out how I want it to with the magic sculpt, I would have to break everything off and start again. And honestly, I don't want to do that. Like, that's not something I'm interested in doing. So I just have to make sure that the magic sculpt is all in place the first go round, that everything's embedded in the magic sculpt that I need to be embedded in the magic sculpt, because I'm not going to come back and drill into it or anything like that. I don't want to do that. So mix that stuff in there too. Just get everything reset here. But initial impression is this is freaking cool. This is turning out exactly how, like, in my mind, kind of what it looked like. We are well on our way to that. So that's always encouraging when you get to that part of the process and it's kind of where you want it to be. So okay, we're going to do ropes again. What's the magic sculpt? I don't want to do, whoops, debris there. But pick that's backwards, actually. I think I meant to do that, because I needed to do that. Haha. Knew it. Okay. So this actually needs to go down a little bit, so we're going to press that down. The back actually needs to come up a little bit, so we can just push the magic sculpt, kind of push it on those. There you go. All this is going to get worked out as well. But the notches and then the back piece there. Okay, that's good enough for now. Then I'm going to get a nice rope going on here. And this is a little bit thicker because this I want to have, the thicker the rope is, the more kind of room I have to adjust. So I need to nail this part here. So quiet for a second. thing. Let's see what that looks like. Yeah, lighting's terrible. Doesn't help there's a giant shelf on the front of this thing. So, like I said last time, that's the center line. That's pretty close. At least on the torso. Okay. And now we need to make sure that north to south, it makes sense. So this needs to lean a little bit forward. Like so. And then actually going around. Not cutting it all the way, but I am going to cut some of this away because I want to keep the rock texture up here. And I can kind of fudge it kind of the rest of the way, but up here, and that's going to be covered, you know, I'm going to do some texture with sand and stuff like that, built up kind of texture there as well. But I don't want like a big border of, sorry, let's zoom out again. I don't want a big border of putty to start with here. So I just got this wet with water. And I'm just kind of smoothing it out there. Ooh, 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 ooh. This is the hard part now. So like all that kind of gap work under there, fill it. Fill it. And then we're going to hit that with the animals. So, and get that off a little bit. Get that off a little bit. Roll this kind of back under there. Take those parts I cut off. Fill. Take this stuff here. Fill. Come on. Oh, it's getting a little squirrely here. You see, this all moves. So none of this is set until that magic sculpt dries. None of this is set. So you can't put this. A tricky part of this is you can't really put that much pressure on the different elements because they're not at all like, look, this thing's still wobbling despite my best efforts to kind of glue this thing in place. There we go. That's a little more solid. Same thing here. We'll do a little build up. Maybe we'll wrap it in chain or something like that to hide a lot of this. It's the other thing I love about doing this scheme is there plenty of opportunities to hide mistakes and hide rough patches and things like that. So I'm coming under here. I'm going to do the same thing that I did on the front. I'm just using slate chips to build kind of a rock. Oops. Like I can probably slide this under here to make this more stable. There we go. And like I always talk about, the more random and varied, the more natural it's going to look, right? So that's not really held on. Oh, come on. Damn. I got too cheeky with it with this piece. That was kind of an unforced error there. But I think it looks good. So I'm gonna try to embed that in there. Just get a very thin very thin of rope here. There we go. All right, and you're witnessing like this is the extent really of my putty skills, is kind of gap filling and stuff like this. I don't have a lot of skill, experience, patience. Yeah, God. As you can see, it doesn't help that this putty just does not stick to this stuff, so it has to dry. Like, it just needed to dry. I need to stop fucking with it, and I just need to let it dry. But I need to embed the slate. This is the challenge. I need to embed the slate pieces while it's wet. Otherwise, they won't stick. I'm just going to come back and just glue slate pieces onto the outside of like the big pieces. Little pieces I can come glue later, but the big pieces I need to get situated while all of this stuff is still wet. Oh, come on. Piece of shit. There we go. Oh, no, come on. I need to stop. I'm getting perilously close to screwing this model up. So I'm going to stick one more piece there. Going to try and get a chip off of this that I can use, or a chip off of this that I can use, or just pick up a new piece. Can I get one like right? Okay. There we go. It's almost like a beetle back, but instead of a beetle shell, it's rocks. And the other part that just occurred to me, all this stuff back here will be a nice counterweight to all that weight that we put in the front end of this thing. So, okay, I need to stop messing with this before it just falls apart. You can see it's already perilously close to becoming a mess because this thing keeps moving. Okay. Almost has like kind of an aircraft carrier feel. This thing looks freaking rad. Oh yeah, this thing is heavy. It's perfect. I love it. I'm super happy right now. I just needed to. Y'all, come on. Stop moving. Stop moving. Of course, it would stop moving if I would, stop touching it. These engines they're not totally lost in there. Something just fell off the front of this thing. I think it was right here. Whoa, that's off. I don't need it leaning over one side. There we go. How does that look? Does that look? Oh. Oh no. Okay. Stop. Stop. That side does not look great, but oh, I can't. Oh, geez, I just stabbed myself. Listen. Slate chip in the carpet under the feet is a pro move. Unexpected slate chip to the toe. Oh, this is... We are losing containment, as I say. This will not be one of my tutorials where I mess up and cry. No crying. Not to... Oh, see that whole thing lifted up. Shit. So this all came about because this thing was definitely leaning... This thing was leaning to the left. And now it's pretty even. Except for the fame. There we go. Oh no! There we go. Much better. Okay. I need to stop touching. Need to stop touching this. And just let it die. Okay, I'm done. I'm done. Stopping. I am done. Now I have, of course, mixed too much of this. And trying to think if I need anything else. Not really. Okay, so typically what I'll do with that is I'll make a couple little... I'll just grab some bases. And I'll just make a couple like hero style bases for... You know what? Actually... You know, it would be cool. Ow. But it's seen. Okay. You know, it'd be cool would be to have an element of slate on the base for this knight. Now, this is a little tricky because I do need to 100% need to pin this knight to the base. So, like, this one is probably going to be too big. It also weighs just an ungodly amount, and it's kind of curved. So, there's no real way to make that one work. This one's a little small, but it could work if I just kind of went with it and then pinned the feet kind of on either side of it, which I don't really want to do. This stuff breaks pretty easy. Of course, now that I say that, it doesn't break. So what I'm tempted to do, this is a really nice texture to it, where I thought I had a smaller piece here. This was the smaller piece. I guess I could epoxy, or I could magic sculpt it on the toes. with the face. I'll have to make gaps to pin the feet or drill through to pin the feet. Because that would be a really cool kind of homage to the overall scheme, to have some big old honking pieces of slate there. But I think instead of doing that, I'm just going to get some blobs here. That was going to be too much drilling through rock, and honestly, it would have been pretty distracting. So just looking at where the feet sit, looking where the feet sit on the base, and I'm probably going to want to, it's a little off center, so I'm going to have a little bit of room on the front end here, in the middle. Probably like there. And then also kind of back here. And I can fill underneath. It's kind of a shitty thing. And then I can fill. So that's going to be kind of like, you should get real specific there. Fill like that. Just to be on the safe side. We're going to crack this actually off its... Oh, what am I doing? And crack that off its base anytime. Yeah. So I'll let these dry. It's going to pivot back a little bit. So after the top part of this dries as well, I will just crack it off the base, and this will become the gaming base, and the other will become the painting base. Okay. It's cutting awfully close. But that's the trick with knights, is trying to figure out just how much you can get away with kind of basing wise. This will also help, again, to kind of tie everything down weight wise, which is obviously a concern with a project of this size. So I think that's it. I think that's it for the magic sculpts. Even though I'd like to use a little bit on the edge here. Give this little rock pile over here a little bit of height. There we go. Okay. There you go. So now I have some rocks on the base. And then, of course, the slate on the crown of the knight. Last little smoothing here. Okay. Awesome. So, that was a journey, but it worked. Glad it worked. And now we have our centerpiece night. The main elements here are assembled, and actually I want to see where are we at. 36 minutes? Yeah, we'll fine. Okay, there we go. And these are going to get obviously integrated into the theme as well. I didn't paint the trim on my smaller knights, but as I work on the larger knights, I'm thinking I might actually do trim, which would be cool. What is this? So then we have, obviously I'm missing the central missile battery. I'm not concerned about that. That's not fitting, so kind of just put these in a neutral, not directly forward, but just guns akimbo a little. And then excuse me. Okay. Kind of the same. Try to mimic weapons. I think it looks more natural. It's not all kind of scattershot. The kind of the angles on the weapons. And this is 100% just me being impatient and wanting to see how this looks. I should wait until this is all dry, because if I'm like risking messing up the main part of the model, the platform. I'm like risking messing that up to fuck with these Melta guns, which is dumb, which is a bad decision. But I'm impatient, so I know this about myself. So those are the main armor plates. Got a couple shoulder plates for these, but pretty cool. Pretty cool. Pretty burly. I like that, how much balance the shoulders and the guns bring to it, because now it's not as weedy. It's not as like skinny. Now it has some shoulder. Like the shoulders look like they could support the platform, right? And then, of course, the Cathalar priestess, which you can't really see in that angle, but there she is. So from this angle, you know, it looks like it can support the structure. so it looks more natural. So that's the goal. Well, I'm really happy with it. I hope this was informative and entertaining, at least. I'm stoked. I'm really, really stoked with where it's at right now. I need to figure out what I'm going to do with the head. I'm just not sure what I'm going to do yet. I just don't know. So I'm going to look at some nights and do some research and try and figure out what I want to do, because really there aren't a lot of kind of hard and fast rules about what I need to do with this. I can do whatever I want, which sometimes makes it a lot harder. We're going to be working on kind of the first layer of detailing on Inaana, Queen of Heaven. I know it's been a while since I've returned to this tutorial series, but I've been waiting for the right head for the miniature. It's on its way. So with that, it's time to start ramping back up on this thing. You can see I added an anchor and some chains here. I'll be showing you how to do that in probably the next tutorial, or maybe the second half of this one, depending on how long the first part takes. I might break it up into two pieces, but this worked really, really well. I'm going to be putting a lot of chains on this model just in general, and jute rope and things like that. So before we can do that, though, you can see, looking at the side of this, just a huge mold line right down, or a seam rather. It's not a mold line, it's just a seam going right down the side of these rocks on both sides of the fane, the herd stone. So we're going to fix those. Doesn't have to be perfect, but we need to do it, because it's just too inorganic and distracting. It's going to drive me crazy. So we're going to fill those, and then we're also going to start laying down some texture. The very first layer of texture, which is we're going to put Martian Iron Earth crackle paint on the armor panels and stuff to give it just kind of a cracked paint look, cracked surface look. It's really easy to do, and it pays huge dividends with the overall scheme. So first things first, a little Vallejo plastic putty. You can use, a lot of people use Milliput or some combination. I like plastic putty just fine. Milliput for me just gets you'll see if you watch any of the like vignette videos where I'm working with Milliput, or Memory of a Thousand Suns or something like that tutorial. It's just crazy. So it just gets everywhere. I'm hopeless. But with this, I use a little silicone shaper tool to just kind of work the putty into the seams, and then I can remove a lot of the excess. And then the idea is that after it's dry, I just need to do a little quick sanding, and it'll clean right up. I can also do, while it's still a little wet, this will shrink a little bit. I can work it like right out of the seam. So I don't want to press too hard. I just want to work this. I'm going to back this way. And it dries pretty quick. I'm not anticipating needing to work on it. Like, I just give it a day or so, at least overnight, before I would use it, before I start priming or anything like that. So just get a Q-tip, get it just damp, and then you can actually just come in here and wipe off a lot of that excess. And then after it's dry, I can come back and just do a quick little sanding. But you can see how much using that Q-tip helped. So, but I've also, got a little bit more filling to do up here at the top. So it's just a little back and forth. Q-tip. Because the Q-tip will draw out, it has the potential to draw out some of that as well. So you don't necessarily want to run it right over the seam. But it's how I fill in cloaks and things like that as well. I'll use this exact same method. You see, this is, you want to make sure that it's not, when you go over with the Q-tip, the Q-tip can go into the seam, and so it'll end up being filled in a little bit, but you can still see it like when you prime, which obviously is not what we want. We want it to be, we want it to be smooth. So if you leave it a little bit high, and then you come back with just the sandpaper after it's dry, it'll be flush. Versus just hitting it with the Q-tip when it's wet, you can really press down into the seam. But not the end of the world. These seams are not they're not in a focal point on the model, but definitely need to fill them, because if you look at it from the side, you're 100% going to see these straight lines just running down the side of the model. But it's not, like on a cloak, it has to be smooth. Has to be smooth. On a rock, stakes are a little bit lower, but and I'm just using a little bit of excess here because that's the seam. I'm not filling in anything up here. I'm going to be wrapping that with chain and stuff. So, it's whatever. With some of this excess, I can just go in. This is all going to get kind of built up with that grassy mixture that I'm going to use for different parts of the Titans, or Knight rather. So it's not critical to fill those gaps, so I'll just save my time and energy. All right. And then now for the super fun part, which is doing a little bit of texture. I mean, to find a kind of busted, synthetic brush. This pot of Iron Earth is pretty done, but we can use some of it, I guess. There you go. Just like this is just a huge glob of Iron Earth. We obviously want to avoid straight lines with that. Fully willing to admit that I overdid it on that first little bit there, but that's okay. And it really doesn't matter where this goes. This is not going to, this isn't going to stay on stone really. So we're just going to focus on the plastic parts, but it does armor panel. I'm not going to do it on the herdstone, obviously, but armor panels, it can come in here on more metallic areas. And it's not really like corruption per se. It's just like cracking surfaces, cracking finishes. So whether that's the paint finish, whether that's the finish on the metal parts, I mean, build up. So, or it can be corruption, like who's to say? That's the thing about doing these feral nights, it's fun, is that corrosion's like a natural process, so it doesn't look out of place, but also it's factionally ambiguous, so it could be Chaos Corruption. If I'm playing Chaos Knights, it looks right at home. If I'm playing Imperial Knights, it looks like a more natural occurrence, which also fits. So just being cognizant of the implications. So here's a newer Iron Earth. I don't want to overdo it. I don't want to just coat this thing in Iron Earth. But because we're not, I'm not going to be doing any designs or anything on the armor plates. It's all just going to be kind of natural grains and things like that. So it's whatever. It can be crackled out. Some of this crackle's not going to crack. Some of it's going to fall off during various stages of painting. It'll get rubbed off, cracked off, whatever. Sometimes it's just not applied thick enough. Shit happens. So just when in doubt, I'm just going to cake this stuff on and have a good time. I think that's probably good. I need to stop before I really just get out of pocket with this. So we're going to let that dry before we come back with the chains and rope and then the kind of grass mixture that I use to build up texture as well. One thing I will do is I will take the weapons and the shoulder-mounted shoulder plates and stuff like that, and I'll also take this Iron Earth before I sign off here. So, like, I have the magnetized weapons here. These are also getting all the treatments, right? So these are also getting the rust treatment or the crackle treatment. These are getting obviously chains and so just like that. We'll leave that to dry. Get the Melta. Because the wonderful thing about this game, I do not have to worry about painting these tanks and detailing all this stuff. I'll paint obviously the metallic elements, and I'll get the ends painted in like a copper that I'll verdigris and do scorching and do all that fun stuff, and we'll be going over that. Oops, I'm off camera. Wow, riveting. Sorry about that. So, as you can see, we'll just kind of glop that on there. Leave that to dry. This is kind of the cowl that goes over the head, which I may or may not end up actually using. I'm not sure yet, but, better to be safe than sorry, so I'll just glob a little on there. I'm not going to be using the missiles, but I will be using... I don't know. This chest plate's going to show up. We'll see what happens with how it looks with the head, but I'd rather just put some of this on there now than coming back and having to do it later. So I'd rather just have, because I'll have to assemble all this stuff when it comes time to like mount the head, and then when you're getting into like the chains and the ropes and stuff like that, that's when you kind of pass the point of no return with like making modifications and things like that. So this is really the first level of detailing. Then I put in the chains and the ropes and things like that. Then I come in with that ground texture. And once I come in with that ground texture, that kind of grassy woodland texture. Once I come in with that, everything's where it's going to be. There's no real change in stuff after that. So that's it. So this tutorial was not very long. I'm going to let this dry. When we come back, I'm going to show you how this kind of crackle effect worked out. And then also we're going to start in on some chains and ropes and things of that nature. So some wire wraps, just little things that add just a ton of character to this army and this paint scheme. So I'm excited. I'm happy to be working on this again. So just going to take a break. It'll be overnight, but it'll just be a second in the tutorial. So we'll see you back here in just a second, and we'll get started with some chains and ropes. So see you soon. Okay, and we're back now. And as you can see, let's get this focused in here. As you can see, we have this really nice crackle texture. Some places it didn't crackle where it's really thin. Some places it did. That's fine. Some of this is going to come off as we paint. That is also fine. Like you can see here, one of these pieces is just chipped off. That's fine. You know, we want to keep it looking very natural, very random. A little less on this night than I've done on other nights, but you know, that's all part of the process. What we're going to be doing now is we're going to be coming through with some chains and some rope and kind of giving it a little bit more character, a little bit more roughness, a little bit more just kind of a scavenged, kind of held together vibe. So for chain, you can see I've already done one piece back here with some anchors for the chain. I'm going to show you how I did that. And then for the chain itself, I get it from Michael's. It's bead landing chain. It's a really, really great size. They sell a number of different types of chain. Like this is also from Michael's. But you can see how small this is. This is what I use for Titanicus. So these links are a lot smaller and better used for Titanicus scale. For 40K scale, these links are nice and big. Let me get the plastic off so you can see what I'm talking about here. So these links you can see are pretty good size. Let's zoom in on these. These I really, really like. So you can see here how they're individual links, which is really important. It makes it look like actual kind of industrial chain rather than jewelry chain where they're like threaded together, or you know, there are a bunch of different styles of jewelry chains. But the one you want are the individual links. Like so. So the goal here, I also have some well, this is just thread. That's more for today. That's for Titanicus scale as well, rather than using this kind of jute rope. So this is very rustic, very feral kind of woodland, you know, woven rope look. So we're going to use that. I also have some wire from, I think, a picture hanging kit or something. This is braided wire, copper wire, or twisted copper wire. This stuff works as well. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take a little bit of this off here, straighten it out. And I'm going to get my backup clippers here. Not the good ones that I use for assembly, but my previous kind of backup clippers. So we just need a little length of that. And then I may need my drill. And I'm definitely going to need super glue and maybe some zip kickers, Mod Podge, PVA, essentially. Little salsa cup for mixing, a little bit of water, lots of paper towels. And I'm actually going to put down my trash cutting board. All right. So now that we have kind of some of these main elements, now what I've done here is I put an anchor from this herdstone down to the back of the knight's carapace here. The cool thing is I can kind of make anchors wherever I want, which is handy. So this doesn't have to be functional, okay? I like when it kind of looks functional, but it doesn't really like have to be functional. It's a magical thing, but we can try. So the goals here are going to be to get some chain going around on the top here and kind of frame this with a little bit of chain and integrate it into the knight so that it's not just kind of sitting there. And we're going to wrap some chain. We're going to do the weapons as well. I don't know why these armor pieces are off necessarily, but regardless, we're going to do the armor pieces as well. I'm going to glue the head on there, I think. I have friends sent, their Patreon supporters sent War Master Titan head from Adeptus Titanicus. I think this is going to look really good, kind of nestled under here. And I think that just gives a really kind of unique look. I'd like it to be a little higher. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually just going to cut off the mounting part for the knight head, because I'm not going to need that. And this is very rough. You're going to, as you've seen already, this is a very rough kind of process, very fluid process. There we go. Because really, most of this is going to get covered. By the time I'm done with these knights, like they're really looking feral. And any of this kind of stuff I can cover up with the flock mixture that I'll be going over next time in the next video. So kind of carve this out. So I wanted the head to sit a little bit higher. So the fact that this is all just kind of mangled in here does not matter at all. I can always come back and put there. See, now the head is sitting a little higher. And I think that's just a much better orientation for the head. So quick hole in the back there. Oh, pretty close. And kind of like right there. Into the second one down here. Right in the center. God, that slate's going to be so cool to paint. I'm really excited to paint these. I'm glad I finally got, I got the head figured out. And then over the weekend, I actually sat down and modeled the other couple of knights that I'm doing for this scheme. I did an Acastus Porphyrian, or Acastus Asterius, excuse me. and a Knight Lancer, and also a Warlord for Titanicus. So I've been kind of in the groove with this, so I wanted to record this first thing on Monday to get, while I'm in the groove, and then I can get it all painted, which is the goal. A lot of glue. Hell yeah, that looks cool. So it has this kind of Titanic feel. The face sticks out enough. It's mounted high enough. It kind of raises the whole kind of level of the Titan, of the Knight. You know, we have this middle portion here, which we'll address as well with the either chains or maybe the jute would be it'd be a good use of it there too. But we'll get to that. Okay, next thing I want to do is I want to make an anchor for some of this chain. So I'm going to use these. So on the plastic model, there were plastic chains that came with this kit, and they fit into that space. So I want to use those anchors that are sculpted into the kit. I got some of this little pinning wire here. And to focus a little bit. There we go. There we go. So I'm going to take this pinning wire. I'm just going to loop it around like so. I think that's probably pretty close, so I'm going to snip it. And then I could take it and just kind of line it up here. You see it's too big. Pinch it a little closer. And I'm also going to cut off part of the end here. Okay. Good. This does not have to be fancy. That's another great thing about doing this kind of feral knight. That's pretty close. Bend it a little bit more. There we go. Slots right in. See that? Okay, now that we have that, let's get the guts out of the way. I'm going to grab a length of chain, and I want to try and anchor this. I can either go back like the other anchor and do a little symmetry, which is tempting, or I can come forward. But I think I want to come forward from the top here with some chain. I think that will look a little bit more intentional and sit better. So we're going to do another anchor here at the back, and we're just going to bring this chain just right from right there to right there. So roughly like that long. All right, cut a length of chain. Perfect. Put that with the anchor off to the side. And we're going to do that again. Okay. Smaller anchor, doesn't really matter. Man, this is fun. I love this. I had a great time over the weekend making those other nights. which I'll do a showcase when the 3 of them are done. I'll do a showcase with these knights and then with the army kind of overall. The armigers are all done. The big knights are the only ones that have been waiting. And now the thing that's also great about this scheme is that it paints up really, really fast. There's a lot of oils and enamels do a lot of work. I still haven't decided if I want to do the trim on the bigger knights. I didn't do the trim on the armigers, but I think I might want to do some trim on the larger knights just to give them a little more. There we go. That fits. Cut this down just a little bit. Okay, now comes the tricky part, which is gluing this in place. So, sure. So, slower down a little bit. Okay. So I have the big anchor for the actual stone here. Get that last link. Okay. How do I keep losing my... Don't spill. Okay. That would have been tragic. Okay, I'm sorry. Brighten this up a little bit. There we go. Okay. Glue just in the cavity there. And now I'm going to use very gently with the tweezer or with the clippers. There we go. So I got that anchor in there. Come around the back side here. This looks a little long. Couple links too long. You can see there. So we want, oh, geez. Couple links off there. Get the other anchor, and now I have to fit it just to make sure, because I want this chain to be pretty taut. I don't want it to be just hanging loose necessarily. I think it's still one link too long. What? Yeah, that's one link too long. Now the tricky thing is that the wire won't actually fit in between links, so I can't just get it on there. I have to cut it to length by the link. So that's one of the things that makes this part just a little bit trickier than it probably needs to be. And I'm going to hold that, get some glue on there. Still came up like a link. Looks like a link short. That's not really taut, but that's fine. That's fine. So now we have a couple anchors there, looking very natural and cool, which is, you know, part of the point of this whole thing is just to make it look cool. Most of the point of this. And then now we can really start to take this up a couple of notches. Now we're just going to get a length of chain and see so like if we were to take this, anchor it down here, I don't always do anchors. Sometimes I just wrap around other objects on the knight, which you'll see here in a second. I'm just going to do this. Should do this real quick. Okay. Okay. Good. Okay. Good. Somebody. There we go. Oh, come on. So now this chain is going to go up here. Then we can kind of loop it around a few times. Now, composition color-wise, this is also important because the chains are going to be very rusty. And so that's going to add some red up here towards the top of the model as well. But you can see, I think that's looking a little too symmetrical. Little too symmetrical. So we're going to back off there. And see, well, so chain's magnetic. That's good enough. Nope, that doesn't work. See if there's somewhere we can bring it back here. Ooh. I think it's just too symmetrical to have it anchored in the same spot over here. I don't know about. Is that necessarily a bad thing? Yes. Okay. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to cut this off here. I'm going to let it hang. Take a little bit of super glue, and all I'm going to do to secure these chains is kind of hit it with a little glue, let it kind of drip down, and then I'll get the extra thin to come back and do like these hanging chains here. But until that happens, that's just going to hang out there. So now we have a nice kind of anchored chain. That looks good. Happy with that. Now, before we move past, so I think we're good on the chains on the night. For now, I generally don't do a lot of chain on the legs. The legs are typically used more like rope because it's more flexible. It doesn't look as rigid. And it just kind of makes, I don't know, more sense. And so what I'm going to do now is grab a couple of these, couple lengths of chain and just do some work on weapons. And for the weapons, it's super easy. So especially like the harpoon is a natural part. And we can see, bring this down here. And we can see like there are little pegs here. So we can take advantage of that maybe as just a starting point. It's probably too big. Too big to fit on a length. Perfect. So this is going to be the right arm. And you can see like we have some gaps here. We can try and cover that up. So this is the right arm. So we're going to start on the inside here, like right, let's say like right in here. What I'm going to do is I'm going to drop the chain on there with that starting spot with the super glue. Drop the chain on there. Hit it with a little kicker to get that spot solidified. And then I'm going to come here and just start wrapping. And this part does not need to look cool. It does. I mean, it doesn't need to make sense. It's just chain on a weapon. It does not need to be functional in any way. It just needs to look cool. And then we're going to come back. We're going to do some texture. So I actually didn't even make it back to that, which I'm not cool with. So just a little bit more glue. We're going to use more chain because that section of chain was a little weak or a little short. And now I'm not going to do a chain on each weapon. That's a little redundant. So I can come back here, wrap this a few times, and then come back up front. Want to make sure that I get that. And then I want to terminate the chain somewhere where it's not really going to be seen. So it just kind of looks seamless and, put together. So. There we go. That looks a little more, cobbled together. That's cool. We can deal with that. Okay. And then this is going to go on the knight like so. And then we'll use a little bit of the jute on the melta gun and on the legs and stuff. And then we're going to be pretty close. So I'm going to grab, I'm going to prep my materials and we'll be right back in just 1 second. All right. And we're back. Here, and this is the fun part. So we get some good amount of Mod Podge here. Water. It's still gonna dry hard. Get that booger out of the bowl. Okay. And now I'm going to cut a length. I want this one to be long, so cut a length of the rope here. That was super long. That'll be for the body. Hang on. Let's get a little piece for the gun so I can show you on a little bit smaller scale what we're going to be doing. So I'm going to take this. I'm going to wrap it up like so. This is messy. So just, be prepared to get messy. And then kind of like doing paper mache. So get that in there. Let it soak for a second. I'm going to wrap up into this. Okay, that's ready to go. So I'm going to get the end of this. And pull off most of the PVA and water mixture, but not all. I'm not squeezing real hard. Let that drip off. Now I'm going to get the next piece and put it in there so that can be soaking while I'm working the current. Usually I'll have a couple pieces in there at once. I generally use kind of shorter strings, but this one is going to be for the midriff, the waist on the knight. And so I need this one to be pretty long. So this one's going to soak for a minute. And then just like I did with the chain, just going to find a starting point. This is a little harder because it's, or easier rather. This is just pressure that's going to hold this down, and then it's actually just going to glue kind of onto itself, which is handy. And then we literally just wrap, kind of come around the top again. And then just kind of wrap this thing, kind of do whatever I feel like, which, is cool. Looks good. So, forgot my tweezers. So now I'm just going to take the end of this and kind of tuck it in here. Tuck it back in under the wrap part here so it can just sit there, and then that just needs to dry. And then we just have a little bit of wrap. So it just looks, rustic, I think is the term. So now that's looking a little rustic. Now the knight itself is looking a little, so the idea is that they're kind of, it's feral, it's a feral knight, right? Like they're out they're being consumed by the world. It's the rock and all that stuff. It's imbuing their spirit, and it's kind of cobbled together and held together. But also there's kind of a ritualistic element to it. There's a reverent kind of element to it, where you have like fetishes and totems and these things, to kind of, to give, vaguely to the, like, to give a little spiritual power and whatnot to the night, you know, I don't know. So part of it is function, but part of it's also kind of storytelling, and I don't know. It's just a cool thing. And I think it looks rad. So I'm going to keep doing it. I really can't wait to paint this thing. It's going to be so fun. I may do some trim. I'm not going to do all of it, but well, dude. Let's see how it looks. Okay. This one's going to be a little bit trickier, but I just started one side. And really, I'm just going to wrap. This is a little nerve-wracking because I got to come all the way around without hitting this on anything. Or okay, here we go. Maybe I'll hold this part, then wrap. There we go. So I just want to cover up that putty. And then because the rope is a little bit more flexible, it doesn't look as strange to have the rope around like joints. So that's why I use it more around joints, and I use the chain more as like anchors. So we're actually just going to continue this rope onto the leg armor here. Ooh, spilling. That's okay. I was not going to get through this unscathed. I knew it. Also a little jittery today. I'm not quite sure. So bear with me, please. Okay, come on. Like, this does not have to make sense. Like, this knight can just kind of have a fucked up hip. And this was like the best way to treat it. Like, the Mechanicum is not coming out and checking their work, right? Blasphemy, I know. This part is also fun because you get to do that thing where your fingerprints end up on the glue when you're done. Shouldn't. When it dries on your fingers. So I can just kind of get the tweezers in behind that rope, grab, and kind of pull through, and then kind of tuck it in there, and then that will all. Then I can also get my brush if I'm so inclined. I can get my brush and just kind of hit a few of these spots where they join or where they stack up, just to make sure that I get a really, really solid join there. And I'm gonna hit these area. I'm gonna hit this area pretty heavy with the moss texture as well. So it does not have to be perfect right now. I gotta clean up this little spill here. Thankfully, it's exceedingly easy to clean up, exceedingly forgiving, because it's watered down PVA. So that's easy. We'll do a little bit more. I want to do a little bit around the left shin, a little bit longer piece, and then I want to do a little piece around one of the melted guns up here to kind of balance this out a little bit. I don't think I need to do any around the herd stone. I don't think that's gonna, I think we're just gonna keep it to the chains and what's already there. Right? I think there's a couple little things already on there. And I don't really want to layer the chain and the rope, if you know what I'm saying. Like, I don't want to put the rope over the chain. I don't think that is necessarily a good look. So let's get some of this off of here. Get this going. All pretense out the window at this point. This is the last pieces here. Soak that up. Looks like that's going to work out perfectly, even with the spill. Now for this, for like a sneak behind here for the first part. Too much. Okay, there we go. Pull that through. Then give it a quick wrap. Or don't morph that. No, looks like he's wearing a scarf. Okay, that's fine. We can bury that with some of the texture too. Definitely going to put a bunch of texture up in this corner, so we can just kind of bury the end of this up here. Come on. There we go. Get a little bit of glue just to hold that in place for now. like any of that, what just happened. And the thing about doing, experimental stuff, sometimes it doesn't work. I mean, that's fine. I'm fine with this around there. I'm going to beef it up with some of the, texture, moss texture when I come back. So here we go. This will be the last one. And then that'll actually close out this this portion of the texturing adventure. So we've had the rocks, chains, ropes, etc. And then when we come back next time, it will be the moss texture. And then that'll be it. Then we'll be ready for paint. So, which is super exciting. I still am not quite sure how I'm going to tackle the High Priestess and the veil and all that, but we'll figure it out. And I don't know if I was necessarily planning on doing a painting tutorial for this one, because it's like a Kitbash Masterclass, but I think it would be fun. So, okay, kind of tie that off crudely. And then, gosh, this has been a little more challenging than I anticipated, but that's okay. Okay, up here. It's up. Come on, come on. All right. Getting there, getting there. Come on, come on, come on. So I have to... Bye. There we go. Okay, come on. Let go. Let go. There we go. Okay, perfect. All right. That looks a little rough right now, but remember that we are going to be the moss texture is going to cover a lot of this model too. So this is just kind of laying that foundation, and then when we come back with the moss texture in the next segment, then you're really going to see this whole thing come together. I'm really excited because this is absolutely one of my favorite things to do with this scheme and with this project, is to do the kind of moss effect. So zooming out, we have the Night Dominus. These are dry now. These are kind of locked in place. Now this is all dried up. It's been 2 hours since I wound these on there. So not long at all. Typically it's something I might do overnight. But obviously like a couple hours and you're good to go. So now that these are all firmly kind of in place, the chains are done. I did attach the shoulder armor for the guns. That way, when I do the moss texture, I can incorporate those. And these just magnetize right on the arms and look very kind of natural in place. I think this has got a great look, but the look is not complete without the moss texture. It's really what is going to give it that foresty feel. It's not just like kind of rocks and stuff, but also it is a great way to incorporate all the elements together and blend them together without looking like you're blending them together. You can cover up a lot of sins. I'm just going to put the priestess up there because it really is the finishing touch. For the model, this is going to be incredible. It's going to be so cool. Excuse me. So, what do I mean when I say moss texture? I'm glad that you asked. So what I want is to kind of mimic the basing texture a little bit and have the just added a little natural texture to the project. And so I have here Sarkisati, the last of the Saddleborn. This is my Feral Knight Lancer, Cerastus Knight Lancer. This model is ready for primer. I've been waiting to finish Inaana before I prime all 3 knights that I have to paint and the Titanicus Warlord. You can see on Sarkisati, you can see the wraps, you can see more chains, a lot of chains on the shield here that you can see, and also on the lance arm, right on the joint there. And then again, a lot of wraps around like the lower leg, like we did on the Tyrant. The main features obviously are the tusked head from the Stonehorn kit from Age of Sigmar, the ogres, and then his slate chip mohawk, which took me a while to figure out what this model was missing. When it just had the front, it was weighted too heavily in the middle. The mohawk really brought a lot of the energy back up to towards the top of the model. So that was really the perfect thing. It just looks fucking cool. So it looks feral, looks cool. The same slate that I used for, the basing, same slate that I used for the platform here. Same application with the 2-part epoxy resin putty. And then I just put the pieces of slate in there vertically. Some of these are like way too sharp, so I got to kind of break those, but that was jiggling a little bit. Okay, sure. That's weird. Nothing a little super. All right, perfect. So the moss texture here, and I'll zoom in so that we can see. So the moss texture here is a mixture of flock, ground cover. You'll see me. We're going to make it here in just a second. Some sand, PVA, slate chips. So the flock is really doing most of the heavy lifting. This came out of me doing my overgrown terrain for Adeptus Titanicus, which I have a tutorial series on already. That is really what grew this idea from the overgrown buildings and the nature reclaiming the buildings that came up with this moss kind of application. Then that grew into feral kind of world spirit knights for Titanicus. and a World Spirit Warlord. And then that grew into the World Spirit Knights for Warhammer 40K. So that's where we are now. This mixture is great because, again, so you didn't obviously see it before, but this was just like rough putty and slate chips. But with the texture now, I'm able to kind of I'm able to integrate the slate chip Mohawk into the rest of the model. I went really, really heavy on the chains here, but some of that texture is used to kind of go over the chain and kind of integrate it like that. So that's an example of where we are headed with our mixture. And so I'm going to get everything out that I need, and we will be right back and get this back into focus, of course. And we'll be right back in 1 second. Okay, so one of the things that I really like about this basing style, if you will, is that, or this kind of texture, is that really you can get away with, it's like a kitchen sink of stuff to mix together to really get kind of a natural texture. And so here we have the main base is going to be some fine flock. It doesn't matter what color it is. I just use green because, it's green. This is kind of coarse turf, and this is fine turf. For Adeptus Titanicus, you really want to use fine turf. For 40K, either coarse or fine. I think I generally use fine, but I used course on the other big nights, but it doesn't make that big of a difference. So for continuity's sake, I'm going to use the bit of the coarse turf, probably throw some fine turf in there. This is just static grass flock, and here is small basing slate from a GW basing kit from, 10 years ago minimum. These are really, really small slate chips. I'm going to throw some of those in there. This is sand, kind of the last of the playground sand, which has a nice varying kind of textures. This is fine autumn forest nature in a pot ground scatter from Reality and Scale. This stuff is amazing. This is some of my favorite stuff, but that's got a nice mix of kind of sizes and textures in there. And then this is from my green bits box. This is all kind of, I have a green bits box where I have sticks and roots and just natural things. This is like from the corner of that. So all the little crumpled pieces, I'll throw a couple pinches of that in there as well, in order to get a full kind of representation of all these different textures and everything. So first things first, we're going to take some flock, some coarse flock. The majority of the volume of this material is going to be flock. So a little bit of coarse flock, a little bit of fine flock. Keep those close at hand. Mod Podge, a decent amount of that. Water for sure. And then, come on. This is like the most ancient tub. Nice big pitch of static grass. I love the texture that you get from the static grass in this mixture. It gives you like a bunch of little fuzzies and stuff when it all gets kind of integrated later. Oh, I can already tell we're going to need more. So a little more water. More Mod Podge. A little more water. I'll show you the texture I'll show you the not texture. I'm showing you the consistency that I'm going for here when I get this mixed up a little bit more. So a little bit more of the turf, a little bit more of the fine turf there. Okay. Because like I said, most of the volume is going to come from the flock itself. And then now we're going to add some texture. So now I have some basing slate here. You know, that's probably fine. And this is incredibly messy. This is like one of the messier things that I do, but kind of a big pinch of that stuff. I definitely want to get the sand in there, but some nice filler for this. Probably that much. And we're probably working at like teaspoons with this stuff and tablespoons with the flock, if that helps. I know some of you are cooks, so this stuff is a little bit big. So we're gonna tear it up a little bit, get it in there, and then mix. That's pretty close, I think, to what we're looking for. It's a little watery still a little loose because it has to stick. It has to be able to just stick when we put it on the model. It can't be runny. Like the glue might end up so a little more flock here, and then I'm going to throw in some more slate chips because I'm not getting a crunchiness out of that I want. So some more slate chips. So the glue might be a little liquidy, like the underlying glue, but the mixture cannot be liquidy because it has to stick. If it runs, it's way too thin. Better to be thicker. And yes, I know. Move this stuff off to the side. I have like these little tubs full of just random. This is just full of like basing stuff, basing texture and texture for this. So this is a pretty good consistency. So let me. I feel like the bright, like I left and I came back and I didn't touch anything, but I feel like the brightness. There we go. That's not as hard. So you can see here, like if I turn this upside down, it's not running. I could pick it up on the end of a brush. This is definitely the consistency that I'm looking for. Now I'm going to use to apply a big crappy craft brush. You can see just how destroyed. This is not used for painting. This is used for this purpose and this purpose almost exclusively. It's a basing brush, but I don't use it with like super glue because I don't want to destroy it. I just use it with kind of basing textures and things like that. So I'll start on the gun and I'll show you just kind of how we apply, and then the nice thing is this I can glue to whatever. I can glue this to plastic. I can glue it to metal. I will probably come in with her and like cut this rock so that she can be on here and just have this integrate the rock into the base and on the platform, on the top of the platform. So, but we'll see. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take some of this mix here, and I can see the moisture. Just come on, collect close. Oh, God, it's everywhere. All right. There we go. No, there we go. See, now it's a little chunky. I want it to be chunky. I don't want it to be smooth. Like my peanut butter. I want chunky chunk. Okay. Hell yeah. So this is what I'm talking about right here. This is kind of chunky, stringy, kind of nastiness, right? Carpet. Oh, okay. Something almost fell. All right, so I'm going to take this, and I'm just going to pick up some of this texture. And the key is to not overthink this, because we're doing feral grass covered nights. This could work, like you could mix in different things to do Nurgle. You could do, applications like that. But there's really not going to be any rhyme or reason to this. We're just going to make sure that we get some on the harpoon here. So like if I were to mix this up for something Nurgle, I might use more like circular beads, or a bigger grain of sand or decorative sand that have more like circular, more uniform elements in it. And so really like that. Got it in a few places, and we're going to come in on the inside. One of the things that you have to be very careful when doing a project like this is like still getting those textures on the inside areas. That kind of sells it. Otherwise, if you only have the textures on like the outside of everything where you can see it, it just doesn't look as natural. So put that off to the side, grab the other one. This we're going to have a little bit more. And again, I like going up over the chains or the ropes. So like that's too big. That's going to look like crap. It's not going to survive priming and painting anyway, so we're going to take that off. And it doesn't have to be a lot. It can just be a little bit. Like we're not covering this thing. We want to make sure that we're not in the way of the magnet at all but like I said, like we have a lot on this side, that's fine. But then kind of not a lot on that side, it's fine. It's whatever. Now the most important parts where we have to be a little bit more deliberate are going to be on the top of this. Hang on. On the top of this model around the platform. So I'm going to get down here kind of in the lower part of the cup here. Get some of that grass mix. And use it just kind of like caulk, basically. Use it the very rough, kind of natural, grassy looking sealer. But you can see how that's going to integrate. That's going to integrate into, and then what we can do is we can draw this out, because we don't want to just have it be on the just around the base of the platform. That doesn't look kind of natural. So we can kind of draw it out here. We can put it on the edge of the platform, kind of over here, especially if we're going to be putting the priestess on a pile of this stuff here. We have to have it in other places on the platform, right? So there we go. Come back here. And I want to get under. And don't be shy with this stuff. It doesn't cost anything to make, really. I mean, of course, the initial kind of stockpiling of basing supplies. But I mean, I've been collecting different basing material for, a decade. So, but this stuff, like, don't be shy. We can always make more. We do not need to, like, be careful and preserve any of this stuff. It's another great thing about doing this kind of style is, there's not a proprietary product that if it disappears, it's going to affect this army. Like, I can do variations of this theme forever with whatever materials I can find if I wanted to. So, and this is why I didn't really worry about those gaps like I talked about in the first or second video. All these gaps around the sides of this, I didn't really worry about because I knew that we were going to come, and this is something that I want to impart on you and that I talk about a lot, or I should talk about a lot, which is, I always make that first video that's like, make a plan. And then, but being deliberate and having a plan for your model and having an idea of what you're going to do down the line, not specifically, but in general, really can save you huge amounts of time and effort through the journey, through the process. Like, if I knew that I was going to be doing this part on the night, I knew this was coming. I knew I was going to do this. And so I didn't worry about getting the herd stone perfectly matched up with the slate because I didn't need to. I knew I didn't need to because I knew I was coming back later to do this. And this would get it to blend together. And so I just left the herd stone. I got it in place. I got it secure. And then I left it alone. And there were gaps because I knew that this is months later when I finally came back to this project that I would be able to fill those gaps. So having that just kind of general idea, knowing I was coming back to fill those gaps. Whereas if I didn't have an idea and I was just kind of like messing around with it, then I probably would have been like, oh, well, I need to make sure that this fits well because, I don't want these gaps. So I'm going to make sure, I'm going to get out the putty. I'm going to make sure that the rocks and all this stuff and make sure all this stuff fits. Well, I would have taken an incredible amount of time, right? So this is why it's important to have this be like a thicker texture and not run. And so I can do stuff like this, which I need to do to integrate the herd stone into the rest of the model. It's not just going to be this stone kind of sitting up here. By using this texture, I'm blending all the different elements of this model. I'm blending them all together texturally and visually. Now they have shared elements throughout this model with this kind of mossy green texture. Because it's going to be painted green too. But obviously we're going to prime it. But this gives some cohesiveness to what are kind of disparate elements at first. So and we could take like a nice big scoop here and pack it in on this gun up here. And they're like, oh, well, how is the gun going to fire? Like, that's part of the mystery. That's part of what makes this spooky, is that it doesn't really make sense. It doesn't really match up with like a functioning machine. It looks like it's a walking part of the forest kind of thing. It's the whole point. The whole point. The creepiest stuff is always the stuff that like kind of looks natural, but like doesn't look unnatural. And it's hard with nights because I don't it's a little bit hard with something like this because like I do not have the time and patience or the desire really to like come in here and like remake the Knight chassis. Like if you look at the chassis of the Knight, the skeleton of the Knight, it is not that modified. Like it's pretty much stock, except for where like I lengthened the torso, which is a pretty minimal thing to do, especially when I just used a bunch of putty and then wrapped it with twine. So like I'm not really changing the bones of this project. I'm not demolishing and replacing all the armor panels are largely the same. So it's not that the Knight's been reforged. It's that the Knight is being kind of subsumed by nature. It's being assimilated. So that also saves me a bunch of time. I don't have to do, I mean, these conversions are crazy enough, right? I don't have to do even more crazy shit to get my theme and prove my point and get my theme where I need it to be. I don't have to do even bigger changes. This is going to help with texture, but this is also going to help kind of solidify the head in there, because the head is really, there's a very small contact point back there. So this is going to help fill in around the head and really solidify the head in that space. As far as the actual, like, making sure that bit isn't fragile. If I grab it, it's not going to like break. Whereas like right now, it's a little wobbly because there's just a pin holding it. But I used a lot of texture. I'm going to mix up some more real quick. I used a lot of texture, but I should, because this is a big model and it's an important model in my collection. It's like the flagship. I mean, I say that, but the Acastus Asterius is really going to be the centerpiece. The Acastus Asterius is bananas, which I'll grab here in this, at the end of this video, kind of show off a little bit. But the Acastus Asterius is banana. It has a giant the ship terrain from Iden of Deepkin mounted on top of it. Gloomtide ship. So that was a particularly wild conversion, but I think it worked really well. Lifts the sand. Maybe go back to the cart. Playground sand really is the best. Like, you don't buy sand, right? Playground sand is nice because it's like cheap. It's really cheap sand. So it has a lot of different sizes of grains and a lot of different kinds of rocks and stuff in there. So there's a hodgepodge. Ooh, that is too soupy. That is soupy soup. Oops. Okay. Oh, man. There's more coarse turf. Chunky yet funky. There we go. And for this. And of course, the flock and the turf is all just kind of painted plastic, so the glue ends up like rehydrates it and ends up just being like this green, watery kind of mess. Yeah. Okay. We're going to pack it in around the head still. Make sure that, whoops. Go to it. Still a little soupy. But we'll get past it. It'll be all right. The other thing we can do, I really don't want to add more material to this. I'm really kind of materialed out on this. Is you can add a paper towel, kind of swish it around, and get a lot of that, just that water. And that helps a lot. Now it's kind of chunkier. So I'm not really going to get too obsessed with getting underneath all this stuff, but like I said earlier about just making sure that you get the areas, you don't only get the visible areas. So we're just going to cover like those weird kind of spots of putty and then bring this down a little bit on the sides. Because if I do a ton of kind of mossy growth on the upper part of the Titan or the Knight and not a lot on the lower part, it's going to look a little unbalanced. So I want to make sure that I keep that same intensity coming down the front or coming down the carapace of the Titan down into the skeleton or the Knight, excuse me. I've been working on a lot of Titanicus lately. And I did a my World Spirit Warlord Titan for Adeptus Titanicus, which I'll show you. I will go grab the other two at the end of this video. And I'll do a project spotlight, army spotlight on the Feral Knights and the Adeptus Titanicus when I finish this project. So I'm gonna make sure to get, God damn it, sorry. Make sure you get up here, under here. Okay. Then this kind of midriff part is going to be important. God damn it. At a certain point, I'm running out of like ways to hold this without touching the. It's just falling off. So I'm like trying to put it on vertically, which is not. I just really got to trust my glue at this point. Okay. That's looking good. And of course, this will share some elements with like the basing elements of the model as well, which of course is intentional to show that they're all kind of in the same ecosystem. Like this is not, and I think that's what sets it apart from being like, oh, a Nurgle. Like, no, it's healthy, it's vibrant, it's the same palette and everything as the base that it'll be on. If you've seen my feral armigers, that's a great example because this will be done in the exact same way. That they very much look intentional and like they're healthy rather than like vibrant and green and healthy and flourishing rather than corrupted. Because that is absolutely not the look. Even though like one of the goals from this project was to have an army I could play as either Chaos or Imperial without feeling like a total douche nozzle for just like painting them the same, having the same painted knights and being like, hey, this can be either one. Or just playing Imperial Knights as Chaos Knights because the rules happen to be better. I really wanted thematically for them both to fit, which was tricky to figure out. So one of the things I'm very proud of with this project is that I think I've managed to do that. I know I have. I've managed to create a theme and a aesthetic that if I put it down in front of people and said, this is my Imperial Knight army, they're, feral knights or being reclaimed by nature, they would be like, oh yeah, that's cool. And if I put it down and said, hey, this is my Chaos Knight army, they're like chaotic neutral, not necessarily like wilding out for the chaos gods, but they're being reclaimed by like the nature gods. And, they're certainly not on the side of the Imperium explicitly. They'd be like, oh yeah, that works. That makes sense. That works too. They look like that. That fits. And that was really the goal, is to just be able to walk up and say that this is either one and have it still be thematic, have it still be cool and make sense and be thematic, which is hard to do. So very proud of that with this force, because it was one of the main kind of motivating factors to doing something different, was that I didn't have to pick, because I really, 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 really like the Chaos Knight model. I really wanted to do that, but I also play mostly Imperial, or all Imperial except for this army. So it was important. But anyway, All right, let me clean up and then I'll grab the other ones just to show you real quick, and then we'll be done with this segment. But you can see here, now we have this integrated. Everything's integrated. It looks a little sloppy, but it'll all come together. Okay. So like I said, here's the World Spirit Warlord for Adeptus Titanicus, Utu Shamash. You can see here, using the little thread instead of using the twisted kind of jute rope, gives the same look. It's still fuzzy, it's still twisted. It just doesn't, it's just a better scale, right? So using that twine gives it a little better scale. You know, some rocks in there as well. These kind of roots are used as trees at this scale as well. I have some Citadel skulls, some skulls from the Citadel Skulls kit. But this stuff was super chunky up at this scale. But the same, wrapping around here, some wrapping around the guns, and then that smaller link chain that I was telling you about, smaller gauge wire to wire the skull onto the as a face mask. So it just kind of scaled everything down a little bit, but the same exact process. So that's Utu Shamash, World Spirit of Kasarna Prime. That is a free blade warlord for Adeptus Titanicus. And then the big dog, the main event, which is the Acastus Knight Asterius, which is so big I can't even really get it in the frame here. And I realize this is like, you know, kind of the worst way to do this. But, so, I don't have a name for this one yet. But you can see I mounted the whole Gloomtide shipwreck on top of an Acastus Asterius. I have his little laser, this conversion beamer covers here. These go on like so. But I'm going to paint the inside first and then just glue them on at the end. I use this to kind of integrate again. I just got the shipwreck on there, and then I used the texture to integrate the shipwreck into the carapace. It was very, very chunky, rethinking that fine flock, but it's fine. It works. But this one I'm really, 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 really proud of. This was very difficult to do. Come on. You get the idea. I do not want to break this right now, trying to get that to fit. Is that this one over here? Go. And this one we can go over here, I think. Doesn't matter. I don't know why I'm wasting time. There we go. So that's actual double conversion beamer. A lot of chains, a lot of texture. Managed to get the missile rack keep the missile rack open, which was clutch, with the lantern and the chains coming down. I thought it was cool. So that is, I don't know what I'm going to name this one. I'll have to think about it, but this is really going to be the same. And this thing is enormous. For as large as like the Knight Dominus is, the Acastus Asterius is enormous, especially with the giant shipwreck on top of it. So even with the herdstone on top, this is still taller, just by a little bit. And this is a taller castellan. Like, this is like a big ass castellan, because I extended it like at least half an inch to an inch. But like, if I were just to grab a warglaive, so that's an armiger, you know. So cool. I love this army. It's so absurd. So absurd. So this is what we're going for. That's where we're going to end up with everything is right here with all the green. You can see the texture. Yep. Green armor, warm metallics, scorching, red rust. Very straightforward. Very, very straightforward, very accessible. So that's the goal. That's where we're headed. And it's going to be fun. We're going to have a blast. So thank you. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for your support. As always, if you have any questions, please leave them in the comments below so that everyone can see the answer. And when we come back next time, is it time for paint? I think it might be time for some paint. So I'm going to get, weather permitting, I'm going to get some paint on these guys, or some primer rather on these guys. And then we'll come back. There's a lineup of feral knights and titans to paint. So get these primed, weather permitting, and then we'll get some airbrushing down. And really, they come together super fast. There's a lot of oils and it's just really fast. So thanks again. Talk to you soon. Be well, take care, and the Emperor protects.